Maybe we are.
All right. And we are live. Welcome to the Weekly Jargon. I'm Abel Perez.
Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
And today we're here jargoning about fellas once again, throwing some topics out on the wall. What do we got for the thousands, hundreds of thousands of viewers out there?
Well, I mean, today I think we decided to jump on what's out there with conspiracies, right?
Yeah. You know, a lot of headlines talking about the admission of alien or alien life out there, right? Being recovered by our beautiful government here. And, you know, what's interesting about that is it's not really a big deal to anybody, right? It's like you have these officials, former officials saying, yes, you know, we recovered a driver and that driver of that space shuttle or UFO is not human, right? And you would think that we would be freaked out about it, but I don't think we really are, right? First question of the day, are you guys scared at all when you hear that news? Does it scare you?
No, you know what? It's funny you put it that way because it's almost like the movie Ted, you know, where you know he's a talking stuffed animal, and obviously in the beginning everybody's freaked out and it's a thing, but then it just kind of like, okay, yeah, he's a talking stuffed animal, big deal, you know. So I think that in that regard, yeah, I think we're ready,
right?
And I think that's why it's happening.
Yeah, and I think over the decades, you know, since you hear the Roswell, these particular aliens and sightings and what have you, UFOs, I think you talk about it so much that at the end of the day, it becomes like mainstream. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, sure, let's accept it. Mm-hmm. But there's something behind, or at least in my head, that still says, well, I don't believe it until I can see it, right? So if I see it, I mean, obviously there may be some video, but for me, it's just like I still have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. Are you seeing it everywhere you look, Jose? I mean, look at the microphone you're talking on. Look at the switcher boards, the iPad, all of this technology that we're utilizing. I mean, we're literally saving this video conversation in great quality and uploading it, and anybody can watch it from the comfort of their living rooms, their handheld devices like a cell phone, right? So, you know, it's there. Right. And when you really go back to thinking, well, where did this originate? How did it come about? You know, it almost is right around the Roswell times and, you know, the 50s and 60s. All of a sudden these technological booms start to occur and people, the average family goes from listening to news on the radio or broadcasts from the president on the radio to now watching it HD and Twitter and, you know, everything coming out right then and there, TikTok videos, anybody can get their message out.
No, I certainly agree that there's been an advance in technology. And during that period of time, as you said, I mean, this was a time when war, especially World War, was in full effect. And I think countries that were industrialized were trying to figure out what other weaponry they can use to take advantage of any other country and or enemies, right? And after the split of Germany, you had the Russians taking certain scientists that were developing rockets and what have you, and then you had Americans taking other scientists that were developing also additional weaponry that was helping them, especially during the Cold War. And obviously the new movie that comes out, Oppenheimer, is that the latest movie?
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, that's the prime example of you know, just the weaponry that was designed. So a lot of the technology that we have today, I think, was it's spurred because of war. From your cameras that we use on our phones today to the GPS tracker to just about everything with the mic, every component of a phone that you have in your hands, believe it or not, had some type of war. It was directed by some equipment to be able to help the military in advancing themselves.
Yeah. At one point, GPS was only exclusive to the military, right?
Internet, for example. And this could be traced back to the 60s or 70s, where they can actually start communicating in some way or having some type of intranet type of communication. But the advancement of it has now allowed us to do it over waves. Cellular towers.
But then again, Jose, you know, just because you know, two groups are going to go to war together, it's the technology piece, the know-how, the understanding has to come from somewhere, right?
Of course.
Those ideas. And that's where, you know, you UFO technology, you know, you start piecing apart the technology that whatever this alien-like, you know, specimen that landed here or crashed here had, you know, did we reverse engineer all of that? And here we are some time later.
You know what? I the part of me that says no is, you know, like Jose said, you know, okay, cell phones. You know, your first cell phones were because of military, you know, and now we're supposed to have aliens have these, you know, floating cars and these whatever technology that we should have. It's almost like, well, why not? Why aren't, if we have that technology, why are they holding back levitation and all these things that are supposed to be, you know, space age technologies that could advance us? Are we not ready for it? Or is it because they can't find a way to make money on it? You know, because that, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, in some degree, I agree with you when you look at the perspective and you say, "Wow, look at this phone and look what all it can do in this couple years that you know we've moved along." Yeah, but we're so far behind what was a alien race should have. You know,
Maybe we don't have the same type of energy that they had. That, you know, we don't have the same amount of power for things like levitation. You see the drones starting to become a lot more accessible, doing a whole lot, you know, different, just, you know, bigger planes that are not even occupied by human beings, right? And, you know, that's essentially that drone type technology. Yeah, but very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you go back to earlier civilizations, you look at the pyramids, for example, the ruins in these Incan or the Aztecs, Mayans, and even Egyptians. Even before that, you start seeing how they came up with the structures and how they were able to align perfect geometry, you know, using astronomy and stuff like to try to bring those things. I think, well, is that human-like, or is that some alien form that really helped them in building these things? And those are some of the conspiracies that float around. I'm leaning to believe that the capabilities of a human brain can actually get to a certain point, because you see these geniuses out there, and you wonder, man, it's hard to fathom that you have a brain that can actually see things, right? That can do things, that can calculate. I mean, obviously in school I can only do so much in math, right? But then you have these other kids that become very like, they're very good at calculating. They're very good at memorizing. Their brains are utilized in a different capacity, and yet they can open different channels that I probably can't.
well,
Right.
and channels is a good word, because that's where in the conspiracy, you know, there is this belief that there is this source of knowledge, and Tesla was one of the guys who expressed this greatly. All of his knowledge, all of his inventions, he said he got from visions. You know, it would just come to him and he would see this vivid vision and he would basically put it into action. So there is a conspiracy belief that says all of the knowledge that we perceive is already there, and some people just have the ability to receive it and gather it
Or access it.
and access it, exactly. You know, so where do you stand on something like that? Was Tesla just a crazy guy, or was he one of these guys that, you know, was he an alien? Maybe that's the right word to say nowadays. Is he an alien?
We have to dive deeper into our subconscious, because a lot of these things that we dream about are also these visions that you know, our subconscious kind of brings together and it formulates some type of picture or vision, right?
Yeah.
And you look at AI, for example, today, and you say, AI, create me a picture of such, such, and such and such, whatever words you put out there. And then AI will compile all these pictures or whatever, and it'll formulate something for you. Well, I think in a sense that's how our subconscious works. You see things throughout the day. I may see that sign behind you there, Rohi, and that may be something that's registered subconsciously. But when I dream about it later that night, I put something together, and this is the beauty of how, I mean, this is a power that we haven't even dived into deep enough to understand. And I'm sure there's books out there, there's science behind it, but when the subconscious comes together and starts putting things together, you may figure out things that you never thought you would, just on your reality, right? What you're doing throughout the day. It's not your subconscious. It's when you're not thinking about it, something else behind you is.
Or is it aliens?
Or
Aliens
it could
talking
be.
to us.
It could be. I mean,
Now, I'll take it a different direction, you know,
Okay.
away from the aliens. But, you know, there is a Netflix documentary, and forgetting the name of it, but it's about LSD and how LSD came
saw that.
about.
Yeah.
And how, you know, these individuals would, you know, consume it, very little portions, obviously, but it makes you literally feel and see the world completely different. You can see sound, you can see colors that you normally wouldn't, right? And obviously, in hindsight, this is a high, right? You're high, you're on drugs, and society. And I don't condone drugs in any way, shape, or form, but obviously, in a controlled environment, which these tests were carried out in, people were able to tap into different parts of their brain and be able to have visions and knowledge and understandings of how certain things work, right? Yeah. And so they carried out that experience, and Rohi could probably share, some stuff that he might remember from that. But I do know that it is common knowledge that individuals like Steve Jobs have experimented with LSD type drugs, and he accredits some of his greatest inventions to the ability to tap into that part of his brain, thanks to these substance that you add to your body.
Yeah, I mean, and so LSD, I mean, with that documentary, what it's talking about is, again, it's allowing, that drug allows parts of your brains that don't normally communicate to communicate. Like you said, that's why you can feel the color purple or smell the shape of a square. Like, it doesn't make sense, but it's because two sensory inputs are coming together through this drug. But it's a good point because it we were talking about mental health, right? And you were talking about these people that see visions or they hear things or they're just, to us, not normal. But you got to understand that at the bottom level, you right now have a perception of where you are in space and time because your eyes are receiving photons and your brain is the one processing it. Like your AI, your brain, if it's a little off one way, like you perceive a different thing. You may see something that to me and Abel here doesn't exist, but reality is a funny thing. Like it's about perception. So again, when you talk about these things, what is perception? What does it mean for me to be here and to see this cup and to taste that coffee that I'm drinking? It's what my mind has been trained over the last 40 years to perceive a certain thing. So when you say like drugs or just, some of these guys receiving information, who even says I'm even here right now? That's why you get to that crazy ideas and conspiracies. Are we in a simulator? Are we just a computer program that is part of the matrix and thinking that I think I'm here, but I'm really just non-existent, And is the person running the program these aliens, Or is that the person that's just on the outside playing a video game right now with our world, and I just happen to be a part of it?
I may have to go back and see the Matrix
trilogy.
trilogy.
Smoke some more drugs here,
But, no, I do certainly...
That's a crazy idea, I know.
No, I do agree that there are certain parts of our brain that we don't tap into. And it's only... and you see this with people that are blind, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Their sensory and their eyes obviously is disconnected, so they focus on some other sensory, maybe their hearing,
correct,
or some other thought or some other type of sensory circuitry. But you see this in people that have autism, for example. I sometimes wonder, well, they're showing signs of like advanced stuff with math, for example. They'll sit there and they'll calculate stuff in their head that I just can't. There's no way that I can sit down. I'd have to get a paper, get a calculator to make sure, but in their eyes, they see something different. Right. They may be lacking the sense of humor that you and I may have. And again, every person with autism may react differently. They have a different, I don't want to call it deficiency or something different. That's just that you and I would consider normal. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't see that in that person. But I do see a highly intelligent person that's utilizing their brain in a different capacity that you and I do. So that I can tell you. With drugs, for example, well, I can tell you that coffee, for example, it's a drug that stimulates and enhances the ability. For some reason, for me in the mornings, I can have that cup of coffee and it will enhance that ability to articulate, to think out, and it stimulates something, but not to the effect that maybe LSD, marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamines, and what have you. And these are all these drugs.
Now you're just trying to have fun.
Mushrooms and what have you. But no, I can see how. I haven't seen that documentary, by the way, but I have heard how LSD has in laboratories controlled studies have really shown how people can certainly tap into other sensory circuitry in your brain that may be able to provide these visions and or revelations, for example, right? When you talk about Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, the Facebook, all these things were already created by the military, by the way. They just happen to find a way to market it and bring it to market, because Windows was already something that was developed in the military, and so was the iPhone, right? I mean, it's just bringing all those components together and then being able to market it. But all those components there were already established by some military form or what have you. Same thing with Facebook, MySpace connections. I think there was some type of
I would
connection.
say the concepts, right?
Yeah.
The concepts were
Yeah.
created by
and it
by
took
military
someone to be able to
personnel.
put these together and say, well, I'm going to market. I'm going to make money off of it. And
How can I give the everyday person value with these abilities?
And a prime example, Tesla, for example, said, hey, I mean, the electrification of cars was already invented a long time ago, right? How do I put it in a good way that I can market it to people that will actually revolutionize the way we start moving automobiles, right? Because, I mean, I think in the 70s or 60s, or even before that, electrification was already there. But it takes someone with that kind of money, that kind of vision, to be able to say, well, we can put this in a very streamlined way of delivering a vehicle.
Yeah.
No different than Henry Ford, right? Doing it back with the combustible engine. But now to say that there is some alien form to get us there, I guess I'm still that person that I need to see. I need to feel. Something's got to be tangible for me. So if there is
be careful what you ask.
Oh,
for.
I know. I
It might
get
be an
that.
alien
No,
come
you're
grab you
right.
while you're on
I
your
know.
your nightly
Maybe
jog.
maybe that would be a perfect. It would be great to have that person here and maybe interview him in the weekly jargon and see what see what we're missing out on. See, maybe he can help us out a bit.
So there's a viral video going around right now, and it's this woman on an airplane, and she's freaking out, saying that this guy's not real.
Shapeshifter. Yeah.
And she is seemingly, I mean, not to stereotype, but I guess we all do it, right? But she would appear to be a normal woman, right? Looked, clean cut, didn't look like she was on drugs, anything like that. Now, I heard that she had been drinking, but who doesn't drink on a plane?
Yeah.
But there was something that she saw, either in the way this guy's eyes, the way he blinked, or whatever the case may be, and she was so convinced that he was not human that she freaked out, and she was insisting out loud verbally that this guy was not real, and it scared her. Why is this guy not real? Why is he on this plane? What's going to happen, right? And when I heard the story, I actually just heard it last night. Heard about it last night, and I'm kind of like, man, that's so off, right? And initially, you just want to say, what's wrong with this lady? She's crazy. But then you're like, but wait a minute, what if she's not crazy? What if you were sitting next to the guy that being? Well, how come that person how come there's no video of him? Because nobody took their camera and started recording him hey bro, they're saying you're not real. What do you have to say about that, right? Oh, this guy's crazy. Let me open my mouth. Let me show you my flesh. Let me show you my eyeballs. I'm real. You knock on my skull if you want, right? It's not metal, but there's none of that. And so it's like, why? So that's part of that conspiracy that starts making you think, well, that wasn't normal, right? What happened?
Why would someone go out and make those?
Yeah, why would a seemingly normal person go out and make accusations like that? And more importantly, it's not like it was the president's not real, right? It wasn't this crazy, I'm trying to get attention. It was on a plane, in the middle of the week, and, nobody famous is there, and I'm just trying to, figure out why this person doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Or is it a person?
Well, I mean, and I think that's part of human nature, is that we're very curious and that's the thing with me is when I hear something like that, I mean, I want to believe it, but I have to see something to at least, because if it's on somebody's account and saying, well, this is what I saw and this is what I experienced. Well, I don't know what you were on, first of all. I don't know, there's not a lot of details to be able to convince me to say, you may be right. And I'm not saying that I need all these facts, but I think we as humans, we're very curious. We listen to the media, for example. and we tend to follow it up until a certain point, or we may get disinterested early on, or we may want to continue to pursue it. Let me see how true it is. You might want to do your own research and then come to find out, oh, it's just a hoax. Or maybe it's something that leads to something different. But I don't know. When I hear stuff like that, I think I still need to have more valid evidence, I guess, in a way. Well, show me. I want to see his face now. Now I'm curious to see his face.
What's his name? Who is
but,
it?
but there is no face. That's the problem. Like, why didn't they, start recording?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think conspiracy. I mean, they've been around forever, right? And there's always conspiracies on, all dating all the way back to day one, and that's a conspiracy in itself. When was day one, right? Who was there? But that's the problem with like too much information, especially in today's day and age, right? You got anybody, including us, can have a channel and say this is the facts and listen to us and we're right. And you might have another channel where they're saying something completely different, right? And that's just any TikTok, Instagram. If you have a social media account, you could essentially be an influencer. And you could kick out information, whether it's true or not, who's fact checking, all that stuff, right? And fact checking, right? That's fake media, fake news, right? We've heard all those terms, tremendously over the last few years, from presidents and things of that nature, right? Because it is that big of a deal. All this information is being pumped. How do we know what's real and what's not, right? And how do we decipher? Or how do we say, yeah, you have a freedom of speech, but only if it's real, right? And then who's going to fact check that? So is giving your opinion okay? All of those things. My wife went to our friends down the street the other night because she forgot to buy dog food. And so we were completely out. And so obviously we don't want the dog to go hungry. So she goes, I'm going to run and grab, some dog food from friend's house. And so she grabs them, comes back, and she goes, oh my gosh, they're watching this documentary. And they are health addicts, and so they're all into that kind of stuff. But it was called What the Health on Netflix. And so she goes, oh, they said we have to watch it, and they're never going to go to McDonald's again, right? And it's like, okay, I can understand. Any health documentary is going to say McDonald's is bad. So we put it on, and within the first 15 minutes, I say, wow, this seems like it seems like this was put on by, the people who don't want you eating meat, right? They don't want you killing cows. It seems like they funded this. And it seems like they said, we're going to not attack tobacco companies and alcohol companies so that, and give statistics on why they're actually not as bad as consuming meat. Mm-hmm. And so maybe they'll be on board with this documentary and they'll promote it and we'll get those people who agree with us and to like this and then just turn, vegan or vegetarian. But I'll give you an example of why I had that notion. One of the scientists or doctors, whatever, said eating one hot dog was equivalent to smoking 5 cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And I said, how in the world, do you come up with that? How can you say, where is all of the science and data behind that? Mm-hmm. But, in a great production, Netflix quality, 4K production with, experts and scientists and all these, great transitions and everything, telling you would be sitting there in your living room thinking, I'm never eating a hot dog again because it's like smoking 5 cigarettes, mm-hmm. right? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like, so we stopped watching it just because I was like super negative about it. I thought, these guys, and by the way, sugar's not bad. Sugar's not the problem. Your body will just burn sugar immediately. And, carbs actually aren't bad. It was all about meat, meat being bad. And I get, I can see how meat can have effects, especially the way it's processed and whatever, where the meat comes from. Obviously, anything's bad for you. But to sit there and tell me that it's worse than alcohol, it's worse than tobacco consumption, it's worse than all of these things that, have, are proven toxins, it was just really unsettling. But just wanted to give that example of how, this information that we receive that's at the tip of our fingers, accessible right at the tip of our fingers, it can be very, scary that it's that accessible to us.
Well, and with that, it's always good for people to know, like, I remember probably like 10 years ago, pomegranate, like all of a sudden there was an explosion, like it's the superfood, you gotta have it. And you gotta understand that when the reason that comes about is because the people who have stockpiles of this stuff, they go to these colleges and they say, hey, look, we'll give you $1 million. Can you do this research? And can you kind of show why pomegranate's a superfood? And if they don't come to that conclusion, they go to the next one, and they go to the next one until they get somebody to give them a study that says,
find a benefit.
Here's the benefit. Okay, boom, market it. It's no reason why we see that with everything. Now you got avocados, same. All these, it's corporate. They have a selling point. They need to sell something. They do a study. You can fact check it if you want, but because it's a college, because we assume that there's these professors, there's all this scientific study that it's acceptable. Not looking at it, well, they're only doing that just because they want to sell more of it. No different like what you're saying. It's like, okay, we want to get the shift from meat to something. There's an agenda behind it.
Right.
This alien thing, the scary thing with it is there's a whole propaganda and conspiracy about that the government's going to fake this, that they're going to come up and basically fake an alien invasion. And are we getting set up for that? Are we so believing that if I saw it on TV right now, I'd believe it? Like you said, like nobody is batting an eye that, there's aliens. Okay, yeah, there probably is. Finally,
right.
We're going to, so if the government comes up with this alien invasion, we're all probably on board now to go say, oh, okay, yeah, it's real. I believe it, instead of saying no. It looks a little staged, like.
Or how about a an alien line of communication being faked, right?
Yeah.
So they don't want to harm us, but they're working with us. And by the way, they say this is the truth. This is the reality.
Exactly.
Right. There was no Jesus, but there was, this guy, or there's this, and this is what you should believe, and this is how you should live, and this is, and how many people are going to be like, well, we knew aliens were out there, but now we know for sure. They confirmed that they helped us with the pyramids in Egypt, right? And so now this is the new reality. This is the new religion. It's called alienism, right? Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's scary.
I just think there's a lot of disinformation. And a lot of that disinformation, it confuses people, right? Because people want to believe a certain thing, but when something of this nature comes across, it's hard not to be curious to see if it is true or not. And it makes you doubt just a little bit. And that's all they want, just that little bit of doubt so that they, you keep that conspiracy theory alive, and before you know it, such and such killed John F. K., right? That's another big one, right? So, and just everything that you've heard, it's hard not, it's circumstantial at sometimes, but they have a lot of people involved, from the mafia, the Italian mob, to George Bush Sr., to, there's just a lot of people surrounding that JFK deal. And it kind of makes you think, well, shit, they bring up a pretty good valid point. Again, production was there. It was a great movie. Kevin Costner came in there and he gave a great detail of it. Yeah. And then Netflix or whatever, another, if not Netflix, another documentary came about that expressed it this way because they knew they had live account of people coming out and saying, yes, I got a call from such and such, traficante. Then somehow it came back to, what was the name of the FBI director at the time? Hoover. And then George Bush Senior, and then so at the end of the day, it's hard not to kind of lean that way. Well, maybe there was a motive there.
Yeah.
Maybe John F. Kennedy was pushing these people a certain way that they didn't like or something. So then you start believing that. And see, truthfully, I don't know what the truth is, and I don't want to say that I think the truth is this, because then I'm only speculating based on circumstances that you've heard over there. And no different with this alien deal. But I do agree that, people governed by a government that feeds you the stories and gives you the stories, sometimes gives you the truth, sometimes gives you false narratives, they confuse us. So it's better to be confused than be very informed and with the truth. Because this way it's easier to manipulate and easier to lead you a certain way.
I'll give you one where it gets tough. So, because we always talk about news and third hand and fourth hand and somebody's whatever. I had a customer, it's been a few years now. He came to me after the Las Vegas shooting. You know, this is the one where the guy from the hotel shot at the country concert. And he said his daughter was there. And he said when his daughter was running away from the shooting, they came across the body bags already stacked up. And he said, because he believes it's a staged event, this was just something put on to push a certain agenda. Now, if you don't follow that story, it's already a very odd story. Here's this one guy, hotel loaded with firearms. He's able to shoot all these guns by himself and then shoots himself at the end, right? And then you got this guy who's a customer. He's sitting right in front of me, telling about his daughter who was there, running into the body bags already stacked up because, again, they're supposed to be a staged event. They got to have dead bodies. And you go, is that a close enough relation that you believe him? Or do you say, nah, you're just crazy? You know?
Well, the same thing goes with 9/11, right? I mean, people were talking about, I don't know if it was
But I'm
weeks
saying,
or
like,
months
if this
before,
guy
yeah.
said I was at
Yeah.
ground zero when it happened and I saw this and this is what I saw, would you take that with more authority, even though he's talking about some weird off-the-wall stuff? Or would you say, no, you're just crazy, dude?
It's hard not to, because I wouldn't take it past the fact that maybe we needed a distraction. Maybe it was. And other people may see this as offensive. Well, no, of course, people did die. Mm-hmm. But it certainly grabbed our attention because that kind of unified us to say, well, hey, who's the enemy? Who do we go after?
Exactly.
And, somehow it ended up being Saddam Hussein. But I mean, and again, I think it's been uncovered that there was no weapons of mass destruction, first of all. And I don't know that they had any link to the 9/11. So somehow they did, because they started in Afghanistan and they ended up invading Iraq. So it leads you to believe down that rabbit hole, like, well, wait a minute. I mean, is it true? Did something happen there because we wanted to, we needed such a big of event, we needed to get Americans behind this war. Yeah.
But that's no different than the alien thing. That's
Correct.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The aliens is just the next 9/11 that says we
it
all unify around this something.
Yeah, this global.
It's like COVID.
Yeah.
COVID was, in a sense, is the same idea. You can't argue a war against something that is not a person. It's not a place. It's like we all came together and we did the stupidest things because of this thing. It's no different than an alien invasion. If these guys decide to attack us, and we say, hey, we all have to come together and do X, Y, and Z because we have to defend against.
It was an alien invasion, right? It was a coronavirus, right? And here's the funny thing about, I mean, I'm not a scientist in how these guys come about figuring out the vaccines, but the mRNA, from what I try to gather, was that, when you inject the vaccine, sometimes the cell structure around it does not allow the vaccine to go in there and rechange that cell so that it can fight a spike protein or what have you. But see, when they did that in an emergency state that we allowed for it to go through without really good studies happening. Normally these studies can take anywhere from 10 years to 20 years before you allow human studies. But because of the nature that it was in, we said, yes, we need this. And here we are. Vaccines and all, I think we're all okay so far, but there may be some side effects in the future that we may, the consequences are there. And one of the things that I heard, again, conspiracy or not, is that because of this mRNA, we don't know what it does to the cells. We don't know if the cells will trigger an autoimmune defense, right? So now it starts attacking your own cells, especially if they get to your heart cells, then those are even worse. So that was something that I thought was pretty interesting. I said, damn, we all agreed. We said, hey, let's do it. I mean, so far, I think we can say that, I mean, it's been 3-4 years and we're okay. But, I mean, I'm kind of curious as to where.
It's only been about 2 years.
Yeah, really, they started taking the vaccine.
Yeah.
So.
March of 2020. So, yeah.
Well, you didn't have the vaccine that day.
You didn't have it. Yeah, it took about a year.
March of 2020, I think soon after, I think like sometime in May, because they made it available pretty quick.
March 2020 is when they shut down.
Yeah.
When they shut
down.
down.
They shut down. How far back was it when they had all that stuff planned?
2022?
No, 2021, I think, right?
Yeah, it's 21 probably.
Late 2021.
I want to say I have my vaccine there, so I have to check.
That's why we're called purebloods, the ones that didn't take it.
Yeah. But and conspiracies are already starting to dial that there are more defects with the heart. you see LeBron James' son. You know, a lot of people started calling that, you know, is he vaccinated, right? Because you have this, you know, star athlete, you know, who's at USC, and he goes into cardiac arrest. You know, and yeah, I'm sure they're working him out really hard, but at the same time, when you're at that caliber, you know, you're used to those type of workouts, and you're probably not like, you know, I would probably argue that, you know, a high school is probably a little bit harder on you than like a powerhouse like USC, where you have all the best trainers and dietitians and everything on site, and it's more about, you know, skill level, skill drills versus, you know, trying to blow up your heart. But so that's why people are, you know, waving these flags. Hey, what's going on? Is that the vaccine? You know, because there's all these other stories of young, you know, people whose heart or they're having heart issues, right? But yeah, these are the conspiracies that exist. Again, we're not starting them.
Experts in conspiracies.
But we're definitely, you know, they're part of our reality, right? Because we have to live in a world where these conspiracies exist. And I think most importantly for us, we have kids. And those kids are having to come up in a world where, you know, conspiracies are becoming more and more accessible because of, you know, how small the world's becoming with
social
technology.
media platforms.
You know, and my kids come home, hey, Dad, did you know this? Did you know that? You know, and, you know, half the time it's good information, or half the time I already know, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's kind of cool that you figured that out, you know. But then other times I'm no, where'd you hear that from, you know? And then you kind of got to, you know, go through it and, you know, try to figure it out for yourself if, you know, what your stance is on it. So it could be interesting.
Well, Roy, if one of these days you're out here by yourself doing the show because one of the conspiracies materialized, then you know that vaccine was probably the
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, but I mean, this is, you know.
Make sure you carry on with the show.
I think that I'm going to go ahead and take back everything I said earlier. No. No, but you know, I think there's, you know, there's certainly a lot to it, and you know, one of the biggest things too, I think that always scares me is losing my mind, right? That's like my fear. You know, you watch these movies like A Beautiful Mind, and Leonardo DiCaprio's in one where he's that guy that he does that big airplane production in the beginning, and then he's like a germaphobe. Yep. But you start losing, you see these people, you start losing your mind.
Aviator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you start losing your mind, or you start thinking about losing your mind, and it's scary because you're like, am I losing my mind, or are people conspiring to make me feel like I am, to shut me down because I'm onto something crazy? Yeah. You know, and I think sometimes that's how people, you know, have people feel. You know, people very popular like Kanye West, for instance, right? He's been very public about, this is what they're trying to do to me. They're trying to make me into this weirdo, into this monster, and they're twisting everything I'm saying, and they're turning the entire world against me. You know, I lost my family because I've lost all this. You know, now, again, did he do that to himself? Or were his statements, you know, really off the wall? Does he really have something going on? Or is he just thinking outside of the box and saying things that most people probably want to say, but don't have the platform and attention that he has? And so now, you know, who knows, right? Yeah. But that's what scares me is, you know, if I ever got so relevant to where, you know, you could possibly be a victim of that, that's when things get kind of scary.
Well, I think that's why you see a lot of insecurities in humans. We by nature, I think that's part of our DNA, right? Mm-hmm. To be insecure at times. If you see the norm and you're not part of it, sometimes you question that. Oh, yeah. And you may be the one that's perfectly right, but these guys are all part of the matrix. Right? I mean, right? I'm going to use Rohi's words, right? Yeah. And somehow you're having a fight against yourself and your conscience, whether or not, hey, are these guys right? Mm-hmm. And it makes you doubt. Right, and that's kind of the way mainstream media works in a way. You know, this is a norm, so we adapt to that norm, and we feel that we're balanced. And we're the right people. We are the ones that are sane. Anything outside of that, that guy's starting to push it too far. He's going outside the sphere of the matrix. Therefore, he's borderline crazy, right? And then goes to Kanye or anybody else for that matter. You know, I think there was a time where Hollywood's becoming right now it's starting to be a big deal. I mean, Hollywood behind the scenes is here's where we're at, and you know, money does all these things, and then people are starting to really talk about the experiences they've had, and are they conspiracies or are they true? You have to be part of the same group that, you know, you have to lay in bed with them in order to be able to kind of continue that success. And if you don't, then essentially you're going to be ousted. And that's prime example of maybe Kanye. He's not following the protocol.
Not falling in line. Falling in line.
Yeah. So I think for us, we can. I like to stay close to what reality is, at least from what I see. Say, okay, if I see Abel, I see him. They're driving cars. They're going to work. Okay, that makes it okay. Then I'm normal. I'm doing the same thing. I'm fighting against it sometimes. Like, damn, why do I gotta go to work today? But you do what you think is normal, and anything outside of that may make you like, well, maybe I'm not normal.
Do you think, like, when you're evaluating, like, either a friend who might be successful or even a celebrity who has success, do you think sometimes we ask too many questions, right? You want to know too much, right? And I'll give you an example. You know, sometimes we don't take things for what they are, like a Tiger Woods, right? You know, if you watch Tiger Woods for who he is, a professional golfer, you're going to say, wow, this guy's really something, right? Now, obviously, we all know about his rich history. You start digging into his rich history, and now all of a sudden you have this totally different image of him, and, you know, and oftentimes could be a very negative one, right? And I feel like sometimes that's what we do. You know, obviously that's a pretty extreme, you know, example, but even, you know, with our neighbors, for instance, right? Neighbor's yard might always look clean. Their house is always kept up. They're great neighbors. They never, you know, litter on your property, whatever. They're not calling the cops when you know, have a little birthday party. They're really cool, all of that stuff, right? But then we start getting into them, you know, oh man, this guy's a weirdo. You know, you should see inside of his house. Well, you shouldn't have been looking in there, right? I don't know. I started thinking about that right now, and I just, you know, sometimes when we look too far, if you dig deep enough into anybody or anything, you're gonna eventually find something that's, you know, probably not as appealing as you want it to be.
Yeah. I heard this once, Abel, kind of to your point, is that we carry 3 different personas. We have the public persona. This is what we want people to see outside. We have our private persona of what we are inside within our family, kind of to your point that this guy has his own things. And then we have our secret persona of how we see ourselves. How our family sees us is the private. How the public sees us is the public. And then how you see yourself is your secret. So I do believe that that's kind of the way human nature is in some way. You know, you want to try to provide an image out there to let people know this is who I am. I'm a God-giving guy. I'm out there in the public, community service, what have you. And then you have your private, which is just your home. I mean, this is where I am around my family. This is who I want to be around my family. And then there's that secret that only you know, right? Yeah. And somehow I think this is where, you know, if you dig deep enough,
and identify that secret,
you may be able to get to that person's. But I think in all of us, we all have certain insecurities, certain thoughts, certain doubts, and what have you. And you're always like cautious about that. That's what you protect the most. And you said, I don't want anybody to know this. This is my little secret. Yeah. But I'm sure that behavior kind of amplifies that secret, because that's how you start seeing, well, wait a minute, this guy's starting to really show behaviors of a ba. Next thing you know, you categorize him, yeah. Right?
And that's the scary technology that's coming about, is the ability for them to
see that,
see your thoughts right now without your permission.
Yeah.
I mean, it is there. It's around the corner.
So I'm inventing this helmet that shows no thoughts lock. Right?
I picture it like looking like a pot, like a straining pot.
It's called a Faraday cage, man.
Okay.
That's what I got to look up.
What was the name of that signs where you started putting the aluminum hats? Yeah. Maybe that's what we need to do.
It's a Faraday cage is what you're trying to build. It's easy.
The aliens are taking over our thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that pretty much wraps up the craziness here. No, but like I said, I think it's an interesting topic and just good conversation, and hopefully it gets you guys thinking at home or in your car, wherever you're listening to this. Drop some comments. Let us know what you think. Are we far-fetched on some of the topics we covered, or have you thought the same recently? So let us know what you think about those aliens too.
Subscribe and share the content.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week on the Weekly Jargon.